A match preview. It's been so long since I did one of those. Leeds United face Watford this coming Friday in what could be a pretty tricky game. We are back with club football, which is absolutely fantastic. I missed it. I don't like the international break that much. And Leeds United are travelling south on what is a very action-packed day with, I think, every single team in the Championship playing. It could be huge for the top of the table. And I think we want to return to winning ways after the international break, of course. We've been winning before that, just to sort of solidify our spot at the top. Maybe Leicester will lose. That'd be nice. But first, are you one of my favourite 12% of viewers? I don't know. Stick around to the end to find out. Anyway, diving into it, into the preview, and we're going to start with the team news, and I'll be honest, it's looking a little bit spooky. Willie Gnonto and Connor Roberts both have knocks, which isn't brilliant. Connor Roberts came off injured. Willie Gnonto, I think, stayed on for Italy's under-21s, but I can't quite remember. But he came back with a little bit of an issue, and it's not quite the worst of issues for Willie Gnonto, because Ilya Gruev has a slightly worse ankle issue that Daniel Farke mentioned in his press conference, which tells us that we might not be able to see Ilya Gruev. It's an issue with his ligaments, and when it comes to ligament stuff, if you accidentally overstrain it, you can just exacerbate the injury, and it'll get worse and worse and worse as you go throughout the season, and you sort of desperately have to hope that we keep him rested if the injury is bad enough to do so, just to make sure that we're not going to make it worse for the run-in. In addition to that, Junior Firpo will not have trained going into this match. Not a good thing, in my opinion. Junior Firpo training would be ideal because you want everyone working together as the squad and preparing for Watford and knowing what they need to do against this specific opponent. But he's had to fly back from Peru. He arrived early on Thursday morning, only at Thorpe Arch, roughly, I think, lunchtime on Thursday, give or take. And basically, a lot of our players have a lot of international minutes in the legs, which is not what you need when we've got 8 matches left in the Championship season and we're fighting for top spot. In addition to that, Jorginho Rutter is recovering from surgery. He might be back for this game. We're not 100% sure. Daniel Farke said that the surgery went well, so I'm going to sort of assume that he's fit and healthy. Otherwise, it would have been mentioned. So, my predicted lineup for this match is big changes from what we're sort of used to seeing. I say big changes. The changes aren't that massive. We're going to start with Elan Melli in net, just because that makes sense. I think he's one of the better goalkeepers in the league. I know some people will disagree. Those people are allowed to have that opinion. I still think it's wrong. In front of that, we've got Sam Byram playing at right back with Rodon, Ampadu and Firpo. Even though Junior Firpo literally just got back, I still feel like he's more likely to play than Connor Roberts, and that is basically the choice. Sam Byram is likely to play on the other flank because Ilya Gruev is out, which means that Archie Gray pushes into midfield alongside Glenn Kamara. I think having these as a sort of double playmaker thing, rather than what is the existing way of doing it with Gruev sitting a little bit deeper, could be a potentially good way to play against Watford. I'll get into why a little bit later. Another layer forwards. Crescencio Somerville didn't have international duty, so he's completely fine. Jorginho Rutter, I believe, will be back from his surgery and able to play. And Dan James, as much as he will be upset at the fact that Wales didn't qualify for the Euros and it's his penalty that was missed, I think he'll want to get properly back up and running as soon as he can, playing behind Patrick Bamford. There's no real reason to drop Patrick Bamford at the moment. Keeps on scoring, best shot on target rate in the entire squad. No complaints from me. So, we know what the Leeds lineup roughly is going to look like. So how do Watford play? Typically, they like to have a nice little 4-2-3-1 shape, which, fair enough, it packs the midfield a little bit, gives you solidity enough at the back if you've got the right people for it. And in addition to that, they like to try and hold possession wherever they can. They're not the sort of team like a Rotherham or a Sheffield Wednesday or a Huddersfield that are going to just absorb the pressure and let you play at them and maybe hit you on the counter. Watford like to have the ball, and they like to use it as well. They are firmly mid-table on XG for and against, which means that they're in roughly the right place. They're 13th in the division. It's the right spot for them. And in addition to that, something tactically they like to do that I've picked out is they like to switch play a lot, which is when you have the ball on one flank, ping it over to the other one. I think specifically the metric that I looked at said if you pass a ball more than 40 yards and it's primarily horizontal rather than vertical, which, fair enough, decent enough definition, they have something like 30 more switches of play than the next nearest team at 210. That is vastly more. And that just says that that's a big part of the way that they play. And someone we need to keep an eye on is Yasser Asprilla. Very good young player, incredibly promising, and I think he has the potential to cause Leeds a few problems in this match. Now, although Watford are good, they do have their weaknesses, and I'm going to dive through those now. And first up is the fact they will commit some silly fouls. They have the second most yellow cards in the Championship, behind, I think, only Sheffield Wednesday. I'll double check that. I saw someone in a very recent video that was like, why are you going to check your numbers? And it's like, well, because I don't want to lie to you. I want to make sure it's correct. They are even with Sheffield Wednesday. They are 3 behind Stoke City. So they will commit silly fouls, and that has led to them conceding the most penalties in the division with 6. Add on to that the fact that their right back, Ryan Andrews, does tend to struggle against tricky wingers. He's not great on the turn, so when you get past him, they've got problems. And in addition to that, they're not ideal at defending corners and set pieces. Recently, we've done quite well from set pieces. We have to think back to when Patrick Bamford scored from that free kick against Leicester, for example. We're slowly getting better at set pieces, defensive and attacking, and that's something that we might be able to see in the match against Watford. So what do Leeds United need to do? Looking at everything that we've mentioned, what needs to happen next to make sure that we get the best possible result? First up, I think we definitely need to target those wide areas. As I mentioned, Ryan Andrews, not fantastic defensively. Jamal Lewis is the player on the other flank, and he's not brilliant either. There's a reason that Newcastle let him go, and he didn't go to a club that is better than Watford. I think if we're able to sort of exploit those areas, and in the case of if Firpo is available, use those overlaps, we're going to cause them significant issues. And even then, Emmanuel Dennis will be forced and pinned back, which is another positive for us. I think we need to make full use of our creative through balls. In the Championship so far this season, we have the most through balls attempted because the way that we just sort of have those nice little bits of interplay with Somerville pinging up one flank, Bamford down the middle, James up the other, and Rutter just finding whichever ball works the best. Perfection. Do that against Watford, we will be fine because Watford's backline is not the best. I think playing with a creative double pivot could be key as well. Having Gray and Kamara means that you take a little bit of the impetus off of Jorginho Rutter. He is good. He's incredibly good. But he is coming back from injury. And this is the time that you don't want to put too much of a weight on him. You don't want to overstress him. You don't want to cause any problems for him. So in those situations, you sort of have to say, right, okay, as much as possible, Gray and Kamara try and do the Rutter job. Rutter can still do it, but this way he gets kicked less, he has to do less running. It could be ideal. And we also need to stay very tight at the back. They have 12 draws and they know how to drag a game out. I think the second or third highest number of draws in the league this season. And that just shows the way that if they're in a position that they like, that they're in, they will just wait for the game to end. It's annoying, but it works. Now, my predictions for the match, I think it'll be a fairly open game. Their long switches will leave them exposed. The way that we press other teams means that if there is a long switch coming over, going towards their left back, being Jamal Lewis, he's going to get pressed to hell by Dan James. And it just takes him winning that ball 1 or 2 times to crack them open, and we will be in, creating chances. And I do think that even without that, we will create plenty of chances in the wide regions. They're a little bit vulnerable out there, and we can make the most of it. And if we do that, the game could get incredibly foully. We know that they have a lot of bookings, they have plenty of red cards, they give away penalties. And whilst that can play to our advantage, we need to make sure we're looking after our players. There are only 8 games left. But that's why it's so important to keep our players, because there's only 8 games left, and if we slip up in one of them, that's fewer games to get that margin back. Ultimately, I'm going to go with, I think, a nice, safe Leeds win at 3-0-ish. Watford are a good team, but I feel like our own benefits perfectly match with where they're not great, and that absolutely works to our advantage. But ultimately, I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments down below. Like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you fancy it. I will see you later. And if you wondered if you were a part of the 12% is the proportion of people that stick around through this little chatty bit after I say goodbye. So if you're part of the 12%, you're one of my favourite viewers. Thank you. See you later.